Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Australia Minerals webinar and panel session, which is being undertaken virtually for IMARC. Now, before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to elders past and present. I would also like to extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are listening. My name is Kristina Anastasi, and I lead the Advice, Investment and Attraction branch in the Minerals, Energy and Groundwater Division at Geoscience Australia. It's a pleasure to be able to join you today as part of Australia Minerals to share some thoughts on the role of government geoscience in building a stronger economy, a resilient society and a sustainable Australia. I will speak briefly about the Australian Government's national priorities, and then you will hear from our state and territory geoscience surveys in a panel discussion following from this presentation. So who and what is Australia Minerals? Australia Minerals is a collaboration of Australia's federal, state and Northern Territory government geoscience agencies working together to offer groundbreaking information, unrivaled expertise and a record of innovation that supports mineral explorers to realise investment opportunities. Australia is one of the world's biggest minerals exploration markets with huge remaining brownfields and greenfields discovery potential. With readily accessible geoscience expertise and research support, Australia Minerals enables investors to tap into Australia's diverse geological potential in a range of commodities to achieve one of the highest exploration returns. Naturally, COVID-19 recovery and our safety and well-being is the primary focus for governments. The federal, state and Northern Territory governments have worked hard to ensure that the mining sector has continued operating during lockdowns with measures such as land releases, frozen fees and billions of dollars in grants, demonstrating strong government support for the industry in Australia. Our recovery is also underpinned by a strong economy and a sustainable environment, and this is where geoscience plays an important role. To set the scene, Australian resources sector has been the engine room supporting our economy during the COVID-19 pandemic and can be described as a standout performer. Over the 2021 Australian financial year, which runs from July to June, Australia's export earnings from mineral and energy commodities were just shy of $310 billion and accounted for more than 2/3 of all Australian exports and 10% of our GDP. The sector employed more than 250,000 people, and mineral exploration attracted more than 400 companies. Gold continues to be the most explored for commodity ahead of copper and iron ore, and exploration for critical minerals such as lithium and rare earth elements has been increasing over the last 4 years. A strong mining sector is important to Australia. As the world and Australia transition to a net zero economy, technologies that support decarbonisation, particularly in the energy and transport sectors, will require a variety of minerals, including critical minerals. The table on the left shows the expected mineral demand for a range of low carbon technology, while the graph on the right shows estimated demand over the next 20 years for a range of minerals needed under both a high-end sustainable development scenario and a low-end stated policy scenario, providing the world with opportunities to work together to ensure new and robust supplies of these essential commodities come online both responsibly and well-timed. The Australian government recognises that critical minerals and associated energy minerals such as nickel and copper will be needed in increasing amounts, and this is also recognised in its national policy priorities for resource discovery and development and its commitment to net zero by 2050. Specifically, I want to highlight that geoscience is contributing to the following national priorities: a pivot by the energy sector to lower carbon fuels and renewables. This includes gas, hydrogen, and carbon capture and storage. It also includes the use of critical minerals for renewable energy generation. This priority is underpinned by the Australian Government's National Resource Statement and the Australian Critical Minerals Strategy. The associated diversification of Australia's resources base. This has seen a diverse resources base bringing new opportunities for our manufacturing sector and forms a key component of the government's modern manufacturing initiative. The global energy transition provides Australia with an opportunity to lengthen and diversify its supply chains by value adding to its critical minerals production. And finally, security of resources and food production is another national priority. It naturally relies on the identification of mineral resources and their responsible management. Geoscience plays a key role in all these priority areas, which are also supported by all the governments of Australia. Geoscience Australia will continue through its work to significantly contribute to all these priorities. Now, this high-level commitment by the federal and state governments of Australia to the long-term health of our resources industry can also be seen in the range of forward-looking initiatives which are shown on this slide. Across Australia, you can see there are 14 programs that have been implemented to drive new mineral discoveries to support the supply chains of the future. These programs provide pre-competitive data and exploration incentives and also include the national flagship Exploring for the Future program. The National Exploring for the Future program is being led by Geoscience Australia and is being undertaken in collaboration with our state and Northern Territory partners. It is an example of the Australian government backing the resources sector and the Australian economy. In this case, with a $225 million investment over 8 years to support the resources and agricultural sectors through the provision of pre-competitive data for potential mineral, energy and groundwater resources. The program has 8 major projects. These comprise of 3 in-depth projects in potentially resource-rich eastern and western corridors, 3 continental scale projects that have national applications, but with a focus in Southern Australia, and 2 program support projects. We are using new science and novel techniques and technologies to provide high quality geoscience data and information that will improve our resource understanding. This includes for critical minerals and lower carbon energy commodities that are priorities for the world. The program is already having quite an impact. For example, 3 years ago, the east tenement to Mount Isa region in Northern Australia, which is shown on this slide, was mostly open ground. Today, after Exploring for the Future data releases, there are more than 30 companies investigating an area 2/3 the size of the United Kingdom, including major companies such as Anglo America and Newcrest. Some in the Australian media have called this activity Australia's largest ever land grab, which sounds rather exaggerated, but does demonstrate the value of geoscience in stimulating economic activity in the regions. Now, before I finish, I want to give an example of how Australia's pre-competitive geoscience work supports successful investment by industry and the economy, with this case, has established a new potash industry sector in Australia. Now, in 2021, Geoscience Australia commissioned Ansell Allen Consulting to undertake a return on investment, which looked at just one of the many potash projects. The timeline on this slide shows that when we first published our work on potash in 2013 and utilising this work, Goldfield Resources investigated the potential of potash on their tenements, and by 2015 had shifted its exploration focus to potash. Then in 2016, they formally changed their name to Australian Potash. A feasibility study was completed in 2019, and on the back of this study, they moved quickly to FEED, with production anticipated to commence in 2023. So what does this mean? In terms of the return on investment regarding the pre-competitive work that was undertaken by Geoscience Australia, our 2-year project, which only cost $2.7 million, Ansell Allen has anticipated the net benefit for every dollar that was spent by Geoscience Australia will see a return between $158 and $254 to Australia, of which $65 to $93 will be a return to the Commonwealth Government in taxes. With these returns, it's no wonder that some in the industry say that investment in pre-competitive geoscience is about the best investment that governments can make. In this case, investments made about a decade ago are coming to fruition. So watch this space as the exciting pre-competitive work we are doing as part of Exploring for the Future program influences and stimulates new investment and discovery into the future. Now, thank you all for taking the time to listen. Coming up next, my Australian mineral colleagues will join me as I host a panel discussion on Australia's resources sector and jurisdictional priorities and activities. This slide provides you with links for further information on Australian Minerals, representatives and the Exploring for the Future program, including data and information releases. Thank you. Welcome everyone now to the panel session. I'll now ask my Australian mineral colleagues to introduce themselves. Western Australia.
Hi, I'm Sarah Sargent. I'm the Mineral Investment Specialist working with the Geological Survey of Western Australia, and I'm really happy to be talking today.
Thanks, Sarah. Northern Territory.
Hi, my name's Ian Scrimgeour. I'm the Senior Executive Director of the Northern Territory Geological Survey here in Darwin, and it's good to be part of the panel.
New South Wales.
I'm Grant McLatchie and I'm the Executive Director of the Geological Survey of New South Wales, which is part of the Mining, Exploration and Geoscience Division, and I'm glad to be here today.
Thank you. And Victoria?
Hi everyone, I'm Kate Bassano. I'm the Manager of Exploration and Development at the Geological Survey of Victoria, and it's really great to be here.
Thanks. And Tasmania?
Hi, I'm Andrew McNeill. I'm the Chief Government Geologist at Mineral Resources Tasmania, and I'd like to thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Now, thank you everyone for your introductions, and I would now like to actually start with a question that we've received, which is in relation to low carbon transition. The question is, what are you doing to facilitate the transition to renewables? Now, we've heard what the Australian government's got in place. I've touched on it briefly. Might pass over to Andrew in Tasmania.
Thanks, Kristina. In terms of the transition to renewables, Tasmania has had net zero emissions from 2013 until 2020. We are now 100% self-sufficient in renewable energy, largely from wind and hydro, and we are aiming for 200% renewable energy supply by 2040, and that will be gained by new wind and pumped hydro schemes. In terms of hydro schemes, 2 are currently in planning, and these will require the new Bass Strait connector to be economic. In terms of hydrogen, there are various proposals for the production of hydrogen by electrolysis, and the Deep Blue CRC will commence construction of a demonstration plant in 2022. There's also increasing interest in natural hydrogen, and 4 exploration licence applications have been lodged in the state. The government is keen for these developments, in particularly hydrogen, to be located at Bell Bay, adjacent to the port and major industrial facilities. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that, Andrew. It's very exciting stuff. New South Wales, Grant, would you like to give some overview of what's happening in New South Wales?
Thanks, Kristina. New South Wales has committed to a net zero emissions plan by 2050, and this will see a significant change across a whole range of industries and society as a whole. Relevant to this discussion is New South Wales' critical mineral strategy, which will involve a range of programs focusing on critical minerals to provide the materials that are needed for renewable energy generation, transmission infrastructure, and high-tech manufacturing. Now, this strategy from a geoscience perspective includes examining the critical mineral content of tailings, targeted geophysical surveys, and mineral systems modelling to assist in identifying possible resources and also to provide enhanced data to explorers. The key critical minerals identified in the New South Wales strategy are driven by geology, of course, so we are focusing on copper, rare earth elements, cobalt, scandium, titanium, zirconium, tungsten, and antimony. And lastly, we are opening up greater areas of the state's most prospective ground through the removal of the controlled release mineral allocation areas that were previously put in place. And we hope this will enable access to all interested explorers to invest some money. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Now, before I move on to the next question, I want to ask Western Australia, Sarah, about the work that's happening there about transitioning to renewables.
So we're highlighting WA's resource mineral inventory and the role our resources sector will play in meeting global demand for critical minerals and the battery metals required for the energy transition and manufacturing of renewables. We're also generating pre-competitive data sets to expand this resource inventory and to unlock new exploration frontiers. Plus also looking at the prospectivity of mine waste, where critical minerals may have been discarded in tailings through previous mining operations. There's great work being undertaken through other states in this space, and scoping is underway to revisit the exploration potential of WA's own mining past.
As we can see, there's a lot of exciting stuff happening here across all the various jurisdictions, and innovative work, as well as new ways of looking for critical minerals through tailings and looking at our mine waste. Now, apart from energy transition to renewables, what other factors are going to influence, Sarah, if I can stay with you, Western Australia's resources?
Well, we're seeing an unprecedented global demand for WA rare earth elements for aerospace, space and military applications. The US Department of Defense has recently signed a major deal with Lynas Corporation to build a heavy rare earth processing facility in Texas. Now, this plant would receive feedstock from Lynas's Kalgoorlie cracking and leaching processing plant, which is currently under construction in Kalgoorlie. Also, demand for fertiliser and chemical additives such as urea will continue to drive demand for WA resources. The recent global shortage of urea has bolstered support for a processing facility to be built near Geraldton in the state's Midwest. Once built and operational, Strike Energy's Project Tabor will supply up to 1.4 million tonnes per annum to the domestic markets, which will secure Australia's own supply to this really important chemical additive and fertiliser source.
Oh, thank you for that. It's exciting to see how it's all feeding into much broader than just a mining industry. Look, and we touched on, and we've heard here quickly about, you know, people are talking about critical minerals, and these are all a priority focus area, both at the national and jurisdictional level governments. I was wondering, Kate, if we could hear from Victoria about what critical minerals are being targeted in Victoria today and in the near future.
Yes, thanks. Well, at the moment, it's all focused on the Staveley area, which is a magmatic arc. And that has great potential for critical minerals. There's also a lot of work underway there at the moment, a lot of porphyry related stuff like Thursday's Gossan, which is a copper gold, and there is quite a gold focus in Victoria at the moment. There's a lot of other potential in the Staveley region because it's pretty much buried under cover of various thickness. Some of it's actually not that thick. But there's a lot of high quality geophysical data and geological systems understanding that's being developed now. And so it's an exciting time in the area. Obviously, Victoria has other proven concentrations of critical minerals, such as tantalum and lithium, which we find in pegmatite dikes in northeastern Victoria, the Mittavita dike swarm, that is. There's indium in VMS systems, such as at Benambra in eastern Victoria, and there's a range of rare earth elements. There's a huge concentration of rare earth elements in our heavy mineral sands in northwestern Victoria and also in the Gippsland area. And of course, antimony is the flavour of the month. And we have plenty of antimony at Costa Field, which is the largest producer of antimony in the country. It's a gold antimony mine. And there's a lot of central Victorian orogenic gold deposits that also have a strong stibnite association. Stibnite obviously is hosting the antimony. And Fosterville, for example, which is a huge gold producer, has a signature like that. And many other gold deposits have silver associations and have been mined for silver. And so there's a huge potential in Victoria for uncovering critical minerals, within our existing gold deposits.
Oh, it's an exciting time in Victoria. Thank you, Kate. Ian, I was wondering if you could give us some oversight into what's happening in the Northern Territory with respect to critical minerals.
Yeah, sure. Here in the Territory, I guess one really exciting development is we've just had the announcement of the first new lithium mine. It's actually the first lithium mine in Australia outside of WA. That's being developed by Core Lithium just outside Darwin, only about 40 minutes drive from our port. And they're planning to be in production this year and are currently doing a feasibility study on a lithium hydroxide plant to be located in Darwin. And more broadly across the Territory, we're seeing a lot of ground picked up at the moment for further lithium exploration, and we think the potential for future discoveries is very high. In terms of rare earths, Arafura Resources are looking at a final investment decision as early as August this year for development of the Nolans project, which is a neodymium praseodymium rare earths project. They're fully environmentally permitted to have downstream rare earth processing to rare earth oxide products. Also, there's a number of copper projects around the Territory that are coming towards production that have cobalt and or bismuth as co-products. And we're also looking at the potential for the extraction of cobalt and bismuth from mine waste in the Tennant Creek area. There's also a major vanadium project in an advanced stage in Central Australia, TNG Limited's Mount Peak project, that are now looking at having processing on site to advance vanadium, titanium and iron products. That's a very quick snapshot of some of the things going on in the Territory at the moment.
Thanks for that, Ian. It's an exciting time in Australia, as everyone can see. Before I move to the next question, I just thought maybe, Andrew, you might want to touch on in Tasmania and where it's going with its critical minerals focus as well.
Thanks, Kristina. In Tasmania at the moment, tungsten is probably the most of the critical minerals. We've been a small-scale producer for quite some time. We have more than 20% of Australia's economically demonstrated resources. Group 6 Minerals are now planning to commence construction at the Dolphin tungsten mine on King Island in the next few months and hope to be in production there by 2023. Other metals such as cobalt, magnesium and the rare earths, there's exploration for those, and there are several projects looking at recovery from existing tailings storage facilities. And finally, whilst not classed as critical in many lists of critical minerals, tin is important for Tasmania. We have 80% of Australia's economically developed resources. It's going to be very important in the transition to the new economy, and consumption is increasing in the energy sector, in the electronics sector. And there are exploration potential small-scale projects and larger scale near production projects available in Tasmania. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that, Andrew. As we can see, it is an important time in the critical mineral sphere across all of Australia and across all jurisdictions. Look, I just wanted to touch on, the next sort of question that's come up, which is actually, could Grant, maybe I'll pass to you about sort of outlining the importance of supply chain security for strategic industries that actually rely on these critical minerals.
Well, the importance of supply chain security, it can't be understated. I mean, increasing geopolitical tensions and reliance on dominant players in certain critical mineral supply chains highlights that issue. And a good example of that is the cobalt in the Congo. Ensuring continuous, responsible and ethical supply of raw materials is absolutely imperative for our current and our future technologies, and also for a decarbonised economy. And just like the other jurisdictions, New South Wales is committed to developing investment in critical minerals. Hence, we released the critical minerals strategy, which I mentioned a bit earlier. The strategy will drive a change from the current dig and export model to one where processing and the use of these materials takes place nearer the source. And a big part of the strategy is the development of a critical minerals hub, a place where mining, processing and manufacturing are brought together to develop supply chains and drive that regional economic growth. And this will provide opportunities for investment in both the mining and the manufacturing sectors. The hub itself will be supported by a range of government programs, initiatives, including enhanced geoscience data acquisition, which I mentioned a little bit before too, and the Parks Special Activation Precinct, which helps to streamline the planning approvals process for mining and the like. The strategy and associated programs will ensure that we have a robust and secure supply chain into the future for those industries that rely on these critical minerals. And that's not just for New South Wales, that's for all of Australia.
Thanks for that, Grant. Now, I had a question come in that probably links back to something you mentioned earlier, Ian, in respect of sediment-hosted copper exploration in the NT. And as you identified, there's been a surge in interest. You know, are you able just to expand on what factors have contributed to this?
Yeah, thanks, Kristina. It's an interesting one because sediment-hosted copper has never been a primary exploration target in the Northern Territory historically. But what we've seen over the last sort of 5 years or so is a real explosion in the amount of pre-competitive data on some of our Northern Australian basins that form what's been historically known as the Carpentaria Zinc Belt, which is one of the world's most productive terrains for sediment-hosted copper. And what all this new data, both from the Northern Territory Geological Survey and Geoscience Australia, have shown is that the Carpentaria Zinc Belt, or the basins that host that, extend over vast areas under shallow cover through much of the Northern Territory. And there's been fantastic work by Geoscience Australia with new seismic data, stratigraphic drilling through the MinEx CRC, as well as collaborative work with universities across the area that's really highlighted the architecture of these basins, the structural controls and the stratigraphy that has really de-risked these large undercover basins to a degree that we're now seeing significant investments. And I'd point to BHP have recently announced a $25 million exploration joint venture with Encounter Resources in an area that's never been explored for base metals in the past, in a basin that was never considered to be prospective. Companies like Oz Minerals and Teck taking up very big ground positions to explore for sediment-hosted copper and also zinc. So we're very excited about this potential, and it shows the power of pre-competitive geoscience and opening up large new areas for exploration.
Yes, it does, and it's very exciting to see some greenfields investment occurring in Australia as well. So it's demonstrating the value of investing in Australia and the stability that you do get for investment in Australia now, resources industry. So in that sense, I might actually wind it up, and I wouldn't mind putting out to all of you, you know, a question or an opportunity to advise the people who are listening and watching today's panel about why they should be considering and looking to invest in Australia. Ian, I might keep with you while you've still got the floor.
No worries. And I guess it almost, my answer probably segues a bit from what I've just spoken about. I mean, I think we would all agree that Australia has advantages as a first world jurisdiction in terms of our ESG credentials and low sovereign risk. But I think it's really important to change the perception that I think might be out there amongst some explorers that Australia is a mature exploration destination. Australia is extremely underexplored. And I think the example I just gave of where new pre-competitive geoscience is opening up vast new areas that have been effectively unexplored in the past just shows that there's still fantastic opportunities for discovery in Australia. But even when we look at some of our more seemingly mature terrains, and I'll use it as an example, the Pine Creek region in the Northern Territory, whilst it appears to be an area that's had a lot of activity in the past, very little drilling has gone beneath about 100 or 150 metres. You know, most past explorations only targeted the oxide zone. Below a few hundred metres, a lot of these terrains are effectively unexplored. So fantastic opportunities for discovery in Australia. It's a safe and stable jurisdiction. So come and have a go.
Thanks. Sarah, would you like to expand for Western Australia?
Absolutely. I think will remain attractive for investment because we have the established mineral resources. And as Ian mentioned, we have incredible exploration potential for new discoveries, especially revisiting old mining areas that have been disturbed to really re-examine the mining footprints as well. We have the skills and the infrastructure to find resources, to mine it, and also deliver it to market. And we have the governance, the social safety, environmental safeguards to ethically produce it in a sustainable way. So those aspects, I think, will always remain true for Australia's resources sector.
Thanks, Sarah. Grant, I'll pass over to you.
Thank you, Kristina. Look, overall, Australia rates very highly on all factors for investment, from mineral potential to sovereign risk to environmental, social and corporate governance credentials, which I might add probably to some of the best in the world. Here in New South Wales, like the other states, we continually working hard to provide greater certainty to industry through clear policy setting. And this is demonstrated in my state by the release of strategy documents for coal, for gas, and just recently critical minerals. In New South Wales, we already have in place dedicated services and incentives to encourage companies to invest, such as our industry concierge service, and some of the things you touched on earlier, Kristina, such as the cooperative drilling grants, which both enhance the attractiveness of New South Wales and pretty much all the other states which have similar programs. I think from exploration's perspective, there's a perception, as Ian pointed out, that Australia is mostly explored, and I totally agree with him. It's clearly wrong. There's lots to find. You just need to go a little bit deeper. So I think there's so much opportunity, not just in New South Wales, but all of Australia to come and tap that untapped potential. A lot to offer for investors.
Thanks for that, Grant. I might just pass over to Victoria, and Kate, would you like to add to that as well?
Well, I mean, I guess I would build on the fact that, you know, recently, the last couple of years, even though it's been really tough, Australia has continued to be strong and a really stable location for foreign investment. And, you know, from a Victorian perspective, our state has proven to be one of the most resilient economies in the nation. Obviously, Victoria is known for its, you know, livability, leading industry like companies, competitive business costs, you know, skilled workforce, etc. And also it's an international hub for mining and met sector. So, you know, great state, and currently experiencing unprecedented exploration interest. And beyond what is known as kind of Victoria's gold story, like I mentioned earlier, it's Australia's largest antimony producer as well, and has world-class demonstrated mineral sand endowment, and also realising a new copper opportunities. So it's just a great time to keep an eye on Victoria's investment opportunities.
Thanks for that, Kate. Before I finish, I just might pass over to Andrew. Would you like to have a final say on why invest in Australia?
Apart from the, as everybody else has mentioned, there's still a lot of exploration potential. One of the things I think is important is the diversity of minerals. Even in a small state like Tasmania, which is only about 1% of the area of Australia, we have incredible diversity, from base metals to rare earths through to the industrials and construction materials. There's just a very wide range of commodities that can be explored for. And we're discovering new types of mineralisation all the time. And there's that is also very important in the potential.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for your time in participating in this panel today. Hopefully what people have been able to gain is, you know, there's great opportunities in Australia. We have a vast array of resources, and these are all underpinned by such valuable and important pre-competitive geoscience information that we undertake both at a national level and at a more detailed jurisdictional level through my colleagues here that you have heard from today and others. So please, you know, I'd like to, you know, ask you to come and take time and visit Australia Minerals at the australiaminerals.gov.au, or even connect with us via our IMARC Australia Minerals online profile. Thank you again for your time, and thank you everyone for being a part of this.